It's early evening in Yucaipa, California. The sun is slipping below the horizon, and the parking lot outside the sporting goods store looks perfectly ordinary. Then, she claims, someone approaches from behind. They whisper a single word, "Hola," and then she sees stars. She blacks out and hits the ground. When she wakes up, her 7-month-old is gone. That is the story Rebecca Haro gave police on August 14th. Her baby boy Emmanuel was missing. At first, law enforcement responded as if this was any parent's worst nightmare, a stranger abduction. Police flooded the area. Surveillance cameras were reviewed. Canine units were brought in to track Emmanuel's scent. But very quickly, investigators realized the pieces didn't fit. The surveillance didn't capture a kidnapper. The dogs couldn't pick up a trail. And Rebecca's story kept shifting in troubling ways. Within days, what started with panic started to unravel into something far darker because investigators weren't looking for a mysterious stranger anymore. They were looking at the baby's own parents. This is the story of baby Emmanuel Haro. Clutch them pearls. Before Emmanuel Haro ever entered this world, his father, 32-year-old Jake Haro, carried a violent past that should have raised every possible red flag. But back in 2018, Jake had another baby. She was only 10 weeks old when she was rushed to the hospital with devastating injuries. Doctors found skull fractures, multiple bones broken, bleeding inside the brain. The conclusion was immediate. This was not an accident. This was abuse. Prosecutors filed charges, but the wheels of justice turned slow, far too slow. It wasn't until 2023 later that Jake entered a guilty plea, one felony count of willful child abuse, and even then, the outcome shocked many. Instead of being sent to prison, Jake was given probation, work release, and a requirement to complete treatment program. The baby girl survived, but her life was changed forever. The injuries left her permanently disabled. District Attorney Mike Hestrin would later describe the sentence as, quote, outrageous. He said bluntly, if Jake Haro had been locked up in 2018, Emmanuel would be alive today. This decision, one courtroom leniency, would echo forward into another child's life, a decision that years later the community would look back on with disbelief and anger. Rebecca's story is much more quieter, less violent, but just as important to understand what's unfolded. By the time she met Jake, Rebecca was in her early 40s and already a mother of other children. Neighbors would later describe her as a private person, someone who kept mostly to herself. When Jake moved into her life, her world shifted. The two settled in Cabazon, California, a small desert community in Riverside County. To the outside world, they didn't appear remarkable. But behind closed doors, the dynamic was very different. Rebecca would later become central in staging the story that Emmanuel had been kidnapped. Her role, whether coerced, complicit, or something in between, remains one of the central questions of this case today. In early 2025, Emmanuel was born. For 7 months, he lived in the Cabazon home with his parents. Family described him as a sweet baby, a child who lit up the room with a smile. But if prosecutors are correct, those months were not filled with safety and love. They were months of escalating abuse. DA Mike Hestrin later said Emmanuel was abused over time before he succumbed to his injuries. In other words, his suffering wasn't a single moment, it was ongoing. And August 14th parking lot story wasn't the beginning of Emmanuel's nightmare. It was the cover story for its end. By August 2025, the pieces of the Haro household were fragile. Jake carried his history of violence, Rebecca carried the burden of secrecy, and Emmanuel, barely old enough to crawl, lived in the middle of it. On the morning of August 14th, neighbors saw nothing unusual. The day moved quietly in Cabazon. But by that evening, Rebecca was on the phone with 911 telling the story that would make headlines across the world. A mysterious stranger, a whispered word, and a mother knocked unconscious, a baby taken. But here's the thing, none of it was true. This was not a stranger abduction. It was a fabrication, a staged event designed to buy time, to throw off investigators, and to cover up what prosecutors say was already a homicide. By August 14th, Emmanuel may have already been gone, and the stage of kidnapping was just the beginning of the unraveling. August 14th, 2025, Rebecca calls 911. Her voice is frantic and uneven. She says she was changing Emmanuel in the backseat of the car. Someone she claims came up from behind her, then whispered "Hola," and then she blacked out. When she woke up, the baby was gone. Police arrived within minutes. The lot is sealed off. Surveillance cameras from the Big Five sporting goods store and nearby businesses were pulled immediately. Canine units are brought in, but the results are strange. The dogs cannot track Emmanuel's scent beyond the vehicle. The cameras do not show anyone approaching Rebecca or the car, and her own description of events changed between conversations. Still, law enforcement treat it like any other abduction in the first few hours. Every second counts when a baby is missing. They fan out, they knock on the doors, they broadcast Emmanuel's photo. By August 15th, the story is on every local station. Rebecca appears in front of cameras, appears to be crying for Emmanuel's return. Jake stands at her side, echoing her words. But behind the scenes, detectives are already skeptical. As the days move forward, the search expands. Search teams move beyond the parking lot. On August 15th, a warrant is served at the Haro family home in Cabazon. Officers seize electronics. They look inside vehicles. Jake's car becomes a central focus. Neighbors recall seeing the couple together, but note unusual tension. Investigators press harder. But by August 16th, inconsistencies mount. Rebecca says one thing, then another. She claims she woke up after just a few minutes, then says she isn't sure how long she was actually knocked unconscious. Detectives ask for details. Was she struck? Did she see a face? What happened to her phone? The answers don't line up. Slowly, the idea of a stranger abduction is falling apart once they interrogate her. On August 19th, reports surface of a possible sighting of Emmanuel in Kern County. For a brief moment, hope spreads. Could someone have really taken him north? Could he still be alive? But just as quickly, that hope dies. The lead turns up nothing. Meanwhile, investigators zero in on Jake. His criminal history resurfaces in the headlines. The 2018 abuse case, the guilty plea in 2023, the probation that kept him free. It's no longer just about Emmanuel's disappearance. It's about a pattern of violence and the justice system that looked away. Then Rebecca stops talking. Between August 16th and August 18th, Rebecca's cooperation stops. At first, she answers questions. She sits for interviews, but as the inconsistencies pile up, she pulls back. By August 18th, she's no longer willing to talk to investigators. Detectives read her silence for what it really is, a red flag. If this had been a real abduction, Rebecca would have been desperate to help. Instead, she withdraws. Investigators draw their own conclusion that the kidnapping story was staged. On August 20th, the detectives take their case to the DA. The evidence, they say, points not outward but inward. Emmanuel was never taken by a stranger. He was already gone before Rebecca ever dialed 911. 2 days later, on August 22nd, the case reaches its breaking point. Jake and Rebecca Haro are arrested at their Cabazon home. They are charged with murder and filing a false police report. At the press conference, DA Mike Hesterin faces the cameras. He says investigators believe Emmanuel was abused over time and succumbed to his injuries. He explains that Emmanuel's likely window of death was between August 5th and August 14th, days before Rebecca claims that a stranger took him. The body of Emmanuel has not been found, but the DA makes it clear. Prosecutors do not need a body to move forward. What they have, the history of abuse and the fabricated abduction story, the inconsistencies, and the seized evidence should be enough. The community is stunned. The narrative has definitely shifted by this time completely. From a baby kidnapped in a parking lot to a baby prosecutors say later was murdered by the very people who should have protected him. With Jake and Rebecca in custody, investigators turned their focus to finding Emmanuel's body. Between August 24th and 27th, search teams fanned out along 60 freeway near Gillum Springs Road. Cadaver dogs were brought in. Fields were combed, ditches, culverts, and brush piles were cleared. One of the most unsettling images came during a period detectives escorted Jake out of the jail. In an orange jumpsuit, shackled, he walks the very fields where he says his son may be hidden. The sight chilled the community. A father suspected of murdering his own baby, standing among investigators searching for his remains. But nothing turned up. At a press conference, the DA Mike Hestron, said there were strong indicators of where Emmanuel's body might be, but so far every search has come up empty. Meanwhile, rumors have swirled. Some claimed Jake confessed in a jail, saying he rolled over on Emmanuel by accident and that he placed him in a trash can. But prosecutors say that Jake has not made any such confession. The truth of what happened to baby Emmanuel's body remains hidden. As August came to a close, Jake gave interviews from behind bars. He denied everything. He said the allegations were, quote, not true at all, end quote. He insisted he had been railroaded in the 2018 abuse case, that his daughter's injuries had been an accident. But the facts painted a much different picture. The baby girl had been left permanently disabled, and Jake had already admitted guilt. Now, with baby Emmanuel, he was once again at the center of a tragedy. When asked about his son, Jake said if he could say anything to Emmanuel, he would say, quote, I love you, buddy. But the words fell flat against the weight of his past. Rebecca, by contrast, has stuck to her story, stayed relatively silent. Her tears outside the Big Five were pretty much the last thing that we've heard from her. Rebecca did a brief interview in the jail. Her role remains a center mystery. Was she an accomplice, a victim of Jake's control, or something entirely different? For prosecutors, the answer is simpler. Both parents are responsible, both face murder charges. Their arraignment was set for September 4th, each held on $1 million bail. The arrest sparked outrage in the Riverside County and among the entire world, for that matter, because Emmanuel's case wasn't just about what happened in August 2025. It was about what happened years earlier in the 2018 case. If Jake had gone to prison, Emmanuel would have never been born into this care. He would never have suffered ongoing, relentless abuse, and he would have never disappeared. District Attorney Hestron didn't shy away from saying it. He called the prior sentence, quote, outrageous. He said plainly, the system failed baby Emmanuel. Child Protective Services were questioned. Probation oversight was criticized. People asked, how was a known abuser allowed to raise another infant? The community held vigils, candlelight gatherings in Cabazon and Yucaipa. People prayed for Emmanuel's body to be found. They demanded reform. But those reforms, if they come, will arrive too late for Emmanuel. As of September 1st, 2025, here is where things stand. Jake and Rebecca Haro sit in jail, charged with murder. They await their arraignment and the long legal process ahead. The body of Emmanuel has not been found to date. Prosecutors say the case is strong enough even without a recovery. The history of abuse, the staged kidnapping, and the shifting stories, the seized evidence is all painting a devastating picture. But without Emmanuel, the case remains painfully incomplete. He may never be found. Detectives want closure. The community wants answers, and Emmanuel's story lingers as a haunting reminder of delayed justice and failing our children. The disappearance of baby Emmanuel Haro began as a story of a stranger abduction, a whispered hola in the parking lot, and a baby gone. But investigators reveal the truth. There was no kidnapper, no shadowy stranger. The danger come from inside the home, from a father with a violent history, from a mother who helped stage a lie, from a justice system that looked the other way. Emmanuel lived only 7 months. 7 months in which he deserved love, safety, and protection. Instead, prosecutors say he endured relentless abuse. And in August 2025, he lost his life. The search for Emmanuel's body continues. The legal process grinds forward, and until there are answers, his story will remain unfinished. Emmanuel has touched so many of our hearts. Emmanuel deserves better. Sometimes the greatest danger isn't in the dark. It isn't the stranger in the parking lot. It's behind closed doors inside the home where innocence should have been safe. Hey guys, I'm Justin with Clutch Them Pearls. Thank you so much for joining me. If you haven't yet subscribed, I'd really appreciate it if you would. And don't forget to hit that notification bell and please hit that thumbs up. Let me know what your thoughts are on this case. It is tragic to say the least. We're going to follow this the entire way. Thank you guys for joining me. God bless you. We'll see you in the next one. Clutch them pearls.